Are you game dev? Or maybe just game curious? Today I want to show you 3 design principles and how you can use them for your project, as well as how I incorporated them into my game. Before we get into it, hi, this is Devlog and I'm making a tower defense roguelike where you assemble little crews, you protect this unstable anomaly, all while dealing with questionable NPCs and rebuilding a town from scratch. If that sounds interesting to you, then please consider subscribing. It really helps a lot with that sweet YouTube algorithm, or at least I think it does. Who knows? With that being said, let's start with the first main area of gameplay, the battlefield. A design idea that has been guiding a lot of my decisions for this area is knowing when to innovate. When designing games, it can be really tempting to want to reinvent everything, or on the flip side, to feel bad when you're taking too much inspiration. But here's the thing. Players will come into your game with expectations, and understanding those expectations is vital. You need to know when you can adhere to norms and when it's fine to break them. I'm gonna try an analogy here, so bear with me, but imagine the player's cognitive load or their brain capacity as a wallet of coins. Everything in the game, the UI, the mechanics, the keybinds, it all comes with its own price tag. Familiar choices, like using WASD or arrow keys for movement, they cost less. On the flip side, unfamiliar designs costs more, like maybe using YJHJ for movement, which I can guarantee you no one wants. So in my battlefield, where the main fighting happens, I sort of rely on these things that tower defense players already understand. There are lanes, you place units along the lanes and monsters walk on them and your units kill them. Very standard and intentionally so. I also borrow ideas heavily from games like Teamfight Tactics when it comes to my units. There are stats, there are 3 item slots and 1 ability that autocasts when their mana is full. All of this familiarity saves cognitive coins in my player's wallet, so I can then spend those coins on more innovative stuff. One of the areas I want to innovate comes from the first thing most players will do in my game, which is purchasing and placing their first unit. I talked a little bit about this in my previous vlog, but basically, my units, they don't really stand alone, they form crews or parties with the people they are around. All my units come with their own quirks that you need to solve. Some of them will want to be close to others get claustrophobic. Some of them need support, whereas others just want to be the hero. Basically like any other co-worker, but with swords. So placement becomes way less about filling spaces and more about solving these little composition puzzles. This then fuels the crew's cohesion, which sort of determines how effective they will be. Once you place your units, you get to my second twist, which is building the enemy pool. Instead of enemies just randomly appearing and charging at your anomaly, you actually get to pick which monsters you fight. So after building your crew, you might think, my guys are really good at dealing with big threats, so I'll avoid the swarmy types that will easily overrun me. So enemies in my game become more something that you manage, not just something that happens to you. Which means it's sadly gonna be your fault when you run into unkillable monster combinations. Now, let's say you did miss to kill some of the monsters you added to the pool. That brings me to the sort of last area of innovation in my battlefield. My game doesn't use traditional player health. Instead, you have something called stability, which represents the integrity of the anomaly. If stability runs out, the anomaly collapses and it's game over. Kinda like player health. Once I moved away from the concept of player life to anomaly stability, I realized I can do a lot of fun stuff with that. Different stability levels changes the world. At lower levels, the NPC behavior shifts and the atmosphere morphs. I want you to get the feeling that doom is imminent. Kind of like how the stability of the world feels right now, I suppose, after the appearance of a certain anomaly. But to back it up a bit, it all kind of comes back to this cognitive coins and wallet. My changes I'm confident in because a lot of my game sort of relies on these already existing expectations. If players finish with the wallet full of coins, then your game probably is not challenging them enough. It probably feels a little bit like a clone. If you spend too many coins, then your game can quite quickly feel exhausting. It's all about balance and it's all about knowing when to innovate. Now, after you're done with all of the fighting, you get to my camp section. At camp, I spawn in a random bunch of these NPCs. These NPCs sort of all come with their own unique effects and unique ways that they can help you. And your choice is to figure out which you want to talk to. The effects from these NPCs, sort of what they can help you with, that is what my next tip is about. Difficulty as a system, or making risk choice. Now I know difficulty can be a bit of a controversial or personal topic, and players will expect very different things when it comes to difficulty depending on what kind of game you're making. a cozy farm game has a very different approach to difficulty when compared to like Dark Souls kind of a game. Some games will rely on difficulty settings like easy, normal, hard, whereas other ones won't let you tweak the difficulty at all. Some games will rely on a very linear approach to difficulty, like it's the same the whole game through. Others are centered around really hard boss fights where you sit up all night trying to fight through them only for you to go to bed and beat them first thing in the morning. Me, personally, I'm a sucker for the risk versus reward idea, where players can sort of opt in to a more difficult challenge, but they're also rewarded for doing so. And games like Hades do this really well with their Chaos Gates, offering really powerful bonuses, but they come with these temporarily awful downsides. And I love them, even though I regret taking them like 5 seconds afterwards. Or Slay the Spire, which has these events that are sort of centered around having a riskier option with a bigger payout, or you can take a safer option. These sort of systems are great because they allow the player to opt into more difficult content. And when they succeed, it feels great, and when they fail, it kind of feels fair because they made that choice. They had the player agency to do so. This idea became sort of central to how I designed the options the player gets from the camp. Many of my NPCs, they do offer a safer option, you know, a small stability bonus here, maybe a little bit of gold, someone give you an item. But some of them offer a more dangerous option, like this possessed archaeologist that I have. She will offer you a cursed object, which will eat up all of the gold you gain until it reaches a certain threshold, after which it transforms into this really amazing legendary item. And then the archaeologist comes back and wants to buy back the item from you, and you can make a choice. Either you cash out, get a lot of gold for holding on to the item, or you keep the item because it works for your build. A lot of NPCs are just like this. They offer you this temporary challenge, but if you complete it, you get a big reward for doing so. This allows the player to sort of control or alter the difficulty throughout the course of the run, depending on the situation they are in. And by doing so, difficulty becomes dynamic and engaging instead of just being a random slider. Now say that you're done with the contract and you successfully protected these people harvesting the anomaly. Now what? Now remember in my game when the anomalies first appear, they cause chaos and disruption throughout the whole realm, causing all the cities to close off their gates and shut out all the outsiders. Now between the contracts or these runs, you rebuild a little society of others just like you. After each mission, you get paid depending on how well you performed, and you use those resources to reinvest into the town's infrastructure. Which leads me to my third and final area of gameplay, which is the town. This acts as my main meta progression layer, like how you get stronger and stronger throughout playing my game, as well as my main storytelling element. To be honest, I haven't started working on this system yet, like at all. I've just been focusing on my main gameplay loop. But I do have a very clear vision for it and have a very good reason for it to exist, which is to gate the complexity of my game in order to increase the power fantasy of the player. In my head, I'm envisioning something quite similar to like Ball Axe Pit or Cult of the Lamb, how they handle it. But I want to do it quite a bit simpler. On one side of the screen, you'll be looking at a talent tree, and on the other side, you'll be looking at a town. The town sort of acts as a visual representation of the talent tree. Let's say you unlock a little tavern in the tree, which gives you access to rogues, and then pop, a little tavern pops up on the screen. I'm doing this to anchor my progression, to make it feel a bit more tangible. Meta progression to me can easily become quite boring. It can be like 5% damage, 10% increased life. It works, but to me it just feels a bit flat. It's like eating boy kibble for dinner every day. It's like, yeah, sure it works, but please don't do that. Instead, I want progression to give player more options, new NPCs, classes, items, new mechanics, kind of things that changes how you approach the game, not just tweaking numbers here and there. Something you can do for your game, and I'm certainly doing it for mine, is to start the player in a very bare bone experience. For me, what that means is that maybe there's just like a couple of classes to pick from, a few NPC interactions, maybe there's only 2 or 1 item slots instead of the 3. It's a very stripped back, basic version of your game, but still fun. Then, gradually, we can add back in new items, chops, class passives, specializations, new NPCs. Now you obviously can make sure that the player have access to all the tools from the beginning of the game. Just make sure you have a good tutorial so you don't overwhelm new players. But if complexity instead grows over time, your player can naturally grow with it. And that is what I mean with gate your complexity. Now that's the main part of this devlog. I'm hoping that this format worked, that you sort of learned some stuff that you could incorporate for your game, while also learning more things about my game. I'm currently working hard at just drawing all of my NPCs and conceptualizing them for my camp. Just
finishing out a bunch of content, getting like sort of a small vertical slice done that I can send out to friends and families and maybe some of you guys if you're interested. I'm also hopefully signing on some people now to do the music and the sound effects for my game, which I'm very excited about. Hopefully they can even maybe do a devlog one day. And lastly, I just want to say to you at home watching this video, thank you so much. If you haven't already, consider subscribing. Hope you have a wonderful day, evening, whatever the time might be. And goodbye.